to ending individual property rights, and even to committing reverse genocide or calling for reversed genocide. I know you're a filmmaker by trade. You're a documentary filmmaker. Yeah, you use the term reverse genocide in your.
No, that's actually that's factually incorrect.
What you did, and so you know, we can't play it because we're not going to pay you to play your video. But that's what you talk about.
Hold on, Joy. You can play the tape.
The whole point of bringing this up, and I've noticed a bunch of people on Twitter are pointing to this thing where he said the reverse genocide thing, and they're conflating his argument with the white genocide thing.
Right.
That the neo-Nazi racists are always worried about. It's a total smear campaign.
Which is, as you're about to find out, he didn't even use that word, and he wasn't even saying. Well, you'll see.
Yeah, he's quoting someone else.
He's quoting a CRT person.
Yeah.
Yep. This is a term. The term is actually counter-genocide.
One moment.
And it comes
counter-genocide. And what is your evidence?
It comes from a book called Rethinking Ethnic Studies, which is rooted in the critical race theory tradition. It's not my term that I'm loading onto it. I'm simply quoting a book that is cited in California's model ethnic studies curriculum. I think that's horrible. You think that's horrible. We can agree about that. But you can't misrepresent where it comes from, who's promoting it.
And model.
Well, that's incorrect, because she can misrepresent it like crazy. They're all going to misrepresent it like crazy. All I see them on Twitter doing is misrepresenting this quote. Like they're basically trying to say, "Oh, this is the new Richard Spencer guy here. This is the guy who's worried about white genocide." Look, he quoted a CRT scholar that said they didn't even say white genocide. They said counter genocide.
Counter genocide, right? And you see, she has the same aggressive stupidity as Vosh and all those other people have.
Definitely.
Where she's just like, you said reverse genocide. No, you said it. You said it. You said it. And then the second he's like, no. First of all, I said counter genocide. She's like, oh yeah. But whatever, same thing. And it's like, what the fuck?
Totally. So you don't. So now my prediction that Vosh is going to be an MSNBC host has more validity now that you're starting to see the wisdom of this prediction, right?
I thought I made that prediction.
No, I made that prediction. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm gonna say that I made that prediction, Adam. You're wrong. Okay?
Vosh
you made the reverse prediction.
One day we will see Vosh in this. I mean, Candace Owens did it. Why can't Vosh do it?
That's true. That's true.
All mainstream media is looking for is someone who's going to turn their brain off and their mouth on. That's basically that's the whole job.
Ethnic studies is not critical race theory. Let me go through one other thing. You say that Ibram Kendi, Dr. Ibram Kendi, is a.
I would ask her, because she doesn't know. I'd say, well, Joy, what's the difference between critical ethnic studies and critical race theory?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
And I think this is where I think Rufo messed up the most in this conversation, is that he really should have just started asking her for give me specific examples of what you're talking about, because she doesn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Whatsoever.
She would have just moved on. She would have said, "No, this is my show. I'm asking the questions here."
Well, that's fine. It becomes very obvious that she doesn't have an answer.
True. Yeah, it does point it out.
College professor, you call him the guru of critical race theory. So we reached out to him. I've interviewed him before. So we reached out to him because you say he's the guru of critical race theory. You name him a lot in a lot of both in your manifesto or your talking points memo, but also in your video. We reached out to him. We asked him if he's a critical race theorist. He said, I admire critical race theory, but I don't identify as a critical race theorist. I'm not a legal scholar, so I wasn't trained on critical race theory. I'm a historian. And Chris would know this if he actually read my work or understood that critical race theory is taught in law schools. I didn't attend law school.
So I love this answer, because he says, first of all, he says, I admire it, but I don't identify it. And the only reason he gives for why he doesn't identify, that Kendi gives for not identifying as a critical race theorist, is because he's not a legal scholar.
Because he didn't go to law school. Yeah.
He didn't go to law school. He doesn't say that he doesn't have some problem with the philosophy. There's no part of it he disagrees with. Just, well, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. Such a non-answer.
I know. And someone on Twitter showed a quote he had where he basically said that all conversations, all social justice critical theorist conversations about race are all rooted in critical race theory currently.
Yeah.
So it's a total non-answer. It's total nonsense whatsoever. But
yeah, it's bullshit. They're like, we manufactured a quote right here from Ibram X. Kendi. Well, today he's not identifying as a critical race scholar, but notice the term identify.
Right.
He's like, I'm politically fluid here. I might be a critical race theorist tomorrow. Who knows? Well, ask me then.
I wish that Rufo had seen Joy's Kimberly Crenshaw interview before he went on her show.
You don't think he did? Maybe he did.
Well, if he did, then he made a mistake. He should have brought up the whole "she didn't answer the question on Marxist" thing.
Oh, really?
Because that would be the one thing I would just really hammer in on and say, well, wait a minute. You asked her this question and she didn't answer. Why do you think she didn't answer that? And because this whole thing, and here's what I would ask Joy. I'd say, you're saying that I'm lying about critical race theory. What critical race theory books and literature have you actually read that gives you that impression that I'm lying? Because she hasn't read anything whatsoever. She's just heard shit from all these people she's interviewed. And then if she says, well, I've interviewed the actual critical race theorists themselves, and you say, okay, Joy, wait a minute. I'm accusing these people of being dishonest. And the way you went to see to validate or discredit my claims is to ask them if they're being dishonest. This is,
not a good strategy.
This is the crack shot journalism that you're engaged in here on MSNBC, Joy.
Yeah, that would have been a great response. I honestly don't know. Like, you and I are both anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-Marxist, but I generally don't know if the anti-Marxist tact with critical race theory, the strategy, is a good strategy, simply because there are so many people who are in favor of Marxism, and they're just going to be like, so what if it's Marxist? Who cares? What's wrong with that? Now I like it even more.
There's a lot of young people there was some poll that came out, some Axiom poll that was like 50% of 18 to 34-year-olds are have favorable views of socialism and negative views of capitalism or something.
Yeah.
But that's the 18 to 34-year-olds. They're not watching MSNBC. They're not the ones making policy. They're not the ones influencing all this stuff. That's the old boomers. Okay. And they all hate Marxism. And I think Rufo's main problem in this conversation is that he sort of approached this conversation the way he approached like going on Fox or any more favorable show, where he's like, I have kind of a list of talking points and I want to get these out there. And I don't think you can approach this situation that way. I think when you're talking to different audiences, you need to focus on different things. And for me, if you're talking to an audience that's on the left, okay, and you're trying to convince them or show them the critical race theory is bad, just focus on the fact that it's illiberal, that it's anti-liberal. Because first of all, most of the audience is going to think when you say it's anti-liberal, they're going to think that you mean liberal like liberal left, not liberalism. And you just hammer on that one. Because Joy's going to say, no, it's not. And then you're going to pull up a bunch of quotes saying, yes, it is. Here's your Kimberly Crenshaw speaking out against liberalism. Here's Derek Bell speaking out against liberalism. You have no clue what you're talking about. Why are you supporting this? Aren't you a liberal, Joy?
My argument in general would be, a lot of people, when you say critical race theory is anti-liberalism, like that, people will struggle to really understand what you're saying.
I wouldn't say it's anti-liberalism. I'd say it's anti-liberal.
Right. Yeah. See, an easy conflation difference there. My general response to that would be, it's too heady to really understand what exactly we're arguing about. But I do think you're right on the money with an MSNBC audience. Like, they're Pavlovianly predisposed to love anything with the title liberalism.
Right.
So if you say, oh, it's anti our entire brand, then obviously you're going to have a better conversation with them. If you go into MSNBC and say, well, it's Marxist, they're going to, not really care whatsoever.
Exactly. Because
that's going to play on Fox News. They're going to be like, what? Marxism? Oh, shit.
Right. Because when you say it's when you go on MSNBC and you say, well, I don't know why you're in favor of this, it's anti-liberal. That's going to completely throw them off their game.
Yes.
They're not going to know how to respond
to
that.
We're the liberal network.
Right. Exactly.
We're totally going against our brand here, guys. Yeah. That would have been better. Is Chris in a position to do that, though? I don't know how political he is. So
we don't have to be political. Yes, everyone, or not everyone. Well, most people in America are in favor of liberalism.
Well,
Being a Democrat
not
or Republican,
conservatives.
is it being part of the liberals?
You can't have that conversation with a lot of people on the right because they're going to make that same conflation. They're going to be like, the left destroys everything. What are you talking about? The problem with critical race theory is it is liberalism.
But that's what I'm saying. You have to structure your arguments for your audience. So when he goes on Fox News, he can go and say critical race theory is Marxist. And when he goes on MSNBC, he says, well, critical race theory is anti-liberal.
Well, aren't you going to be accused, though, of talking out of both sides of your mouth? Isn't it better to have an argument that works with everyone? Because
then when someone calls you out, you say, being Marxist is anti-liberal, dumb, and then you explain it.
You could do that, but I want to dumb it down. I'm always wanting to dumb this down to like a meme because that's the way you win.
Well, your favorite irrational artist dumbs critical race theory down to a meme.
Oh no!
Scott Adams, let's see if you like this. Scott Adams said, critical race theory teaches your children that they're either a loser or an asshole.
Well, that's just incomprehensible. Fucking hashtag artist. I don't.
So you don't like that?
What does that even mean?
Because it teaches if you're a minority, you're a loser, and if you're white, you're an asshole.
Well, I get that context.
Right.
That's my beef with it, is that it forwards negative stereotypes. Like that's the whole point of it. Is
do you think that's a good
dumbing
down framing of it, or do you think that's too?
No, it's good.
Okay,
it works.
Okay.
The problem with this discussion here is they're not really talking about, Joy Reid kind of sidestepped the whole question of why people want it out of school. The left is framing this as right-wingers don't want this in school because they're all fucking racist and they don't want us to teach about America's racist history. That's the way they're framing it. And
which is a total lie.
It's a lie. Yeah, exactly. And the right...
And sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say maybe that's another avenue that if you're going to MSNBC to talk about, say it's anti-liberal, and you can talk about slavery and systemic racism and all these things, this has nothing to do with critical race theory. You can have all these conversations without critical race theory.
Yeah. Yeah, the right is framing it as it's forwarding negative stereotypes of white people. Which I just agree with the right's argument. It is forwarding negative stereotypes. I don't understand. Like if you want to tell, like I'm sure you could have a conversation with Ibram X. Kendi about the negative stereotypes of black people, and he'd have no problem citing lots of ways that people forward those negative stereotypes that are destructive to society. But as soon as you start talking about, well, that's what's happening here with critical race here. It's like, no, we're just talking about the facts. This is just the historical facts here. Well, you're kind of putting a lot of spin on it the way you're framing those facts. No, Adam, you're just you don't understand. This is just objective history.
I agree completely, but the problem is if you say to a left audience, oh, something is forwarding anti-white stereotypes, they're just not going to believe you.
They're not
going to
don't
believe you.
Totally. They're not going to believe you, and they're going to go further than that. They're going to say, you're a racist. What are you even talking about this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Because that's like, Joy saying, oh, I've heard about the equity equality thing since high school. Like that's been a repeated argument that we've heard for the last 30 years. And so that's what I'm saying. I've noticed that a lot of times in these conversations, people, they have like they have like a specific argument and they just repeat it wherever they are. They don't tailor their arguments to the people they're talking to. And I think that's always a big mistake.
You have to be conscious of the fact that you're going to be accused of talking out of both sides of your mouth and you have a great response for that, obviously. Oh, Marxism is anti-liberalism.
Well, you don't want to, I'm not saying you should lie.
Well, I'm not saying you should
lie. Right.
I'm not saying you should lie either, but this is the exact same thing as perhaps it was a strategic mistake on Christopher Rufo's part to even mention the genocide comment, because that's so...
Well, she brought it up. He had to respond to it.
No, I understand that, but to mention it in the first place, like whatever context he mentioned it in was probably a mistake.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, because if he says, oh, here's some school district in California or wherever, and they're teaching something called counter-genocide, like that's a good argument why this is bad. I mean, what does that mean? You're teaching counter-genocide. It sounds awful. And you can't really anticipate that people will just completely lie and say, well, you're saying that, that there's a counter genocide happening.
We're talking about Joy Reid here. We're
I understand that, but you can't-
anticipation of lying is kind of like, that's like the surface level thing.
No, I understand, but I'm saying, like, if he was just talking to Joy Reid, I would agree with you. But he wasn't.
Right.
He was creating a piece for a wide audience to consume.
It's so weird. It's so weird because so much of what we say and do is being recorded and can be picked out of context. I mean, that's basically what Joy Reid does in this entire thing.
Right.
Like, it's so much in one context he says this, and then in another context they play it back to back to make it look like he's contradicting himself. But
and that's the problem, is that this whole, especially on TV where you have limited time.
yeah, hit
Like,
piece.
yeah, like a lot of internet debates, you know, we've talked about this a lot. A lot of internet debates are all rhetorical victories, who comes off looking the best. And that's even worse on TV because there's such limited time that you can't really usually get useful information out there.
Yeah.